Hey there, welcome to Five Guys Movies and Fries, where four dudes get together every 2 to 3 weeks to discuss one movie. I'm Will, and I'm joined by Jeff,
Yo.
Knack,
Hello.
and Joe.
There.
This week we're going to be talking about The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. It is the Nick Cageiest Nick Cage movie because it's the only one where Nick Cage actually plays Nick Cage. It's got a lot of comedy, action, and classic Nick Cage nonsense.
Well, I gotta correct you on something, Will. He plays Nick with a K, Cage. He doesn't play Nick Cage.
Whoa! Whoa!
If you didn't know, he plays a version of himself. He's not literally Nick Cage, N-I-C Cage.
It's a fucking imposter.
Yeah.
There are some differences, although they are hard to point out. But we'll get into that. Yeah, Jeff, what do you got for initial thoughts?
I am very torn about this movie overall. On one hand, I did not like it. On the other hand, I feel like there was some good ideas and some solid... I mean, there was definitely some solid work from like Pedro Pascal, who I thought was impossibly charming in this movie. I also liked some of the ideas that they were toying with, like him and his Nick Cage's friendship with Pedro Pascal's character and his relationship with his family, even though that's kind of one of the most played out tropes I think I've ever seen.
Yes.
But that's part of the reason why I didn't like this movie, is a lot of it felt incredibly cookie cutter to me. It felt like they were smashing 4 different movies together while also having it be about Nick Cage playing Nick Cage. And I feel like it didn't work. I feel like it just was all over the place. I did not like the whole action shit at the end at all. I don't like the mid-movie change. You know what I mean? Like, I don't like how we start with him and his family and work and like going out to Pedro's character's house for like this whole birthday thing, and then it like turns into this like spy shit. I don't know. None of that really hit for me at all. But I did like the whole buddy thing between him and Pedro Pascal. That definitely carried me through the movie. I liked that a lot. I thought it was pretty endearing.
I think that's definitely the strongest part of the movie, right? Like, any scene with them two just hitting off each other is going to be great, and they're both fucking great on their own. So bring those two boys together, and you got yourself a home run.
Yeah, it's funny that a movie about Nicolas Cage starring Nicolas Cage was carried by Pedro Pascal.
Yeah.
It wasn't even carried by Nicolas Cage. It felt like he was kind of phoning it into me in more than a couple ways. There's I was mentioning this before the cast. I do like that we got references to some of his more obscure works. I was not expecting a Mandy reference in this movie at all.
Glad to see that. I was happy to see that Mandy knock. Yeah.
Yeah, that big old axe. He has the axe. I don't know. I just feel like this movie could have done without that whole crime boss spy subplot. I feel like that whole bit with Nicolas Cage acting as that other drug dealer was just impossibly corny and felt like something I'd see in a movie like Tropic Thunder. None of that really hit for me at all.
Yeah.
I feel like if we're going to do a movie like this, if we're going to do this meta movie, then we should have just focused on his relationship with Pascal and his relationship with his family. Once again, I know it's kind of tropey, but I think through the lens of Nick Cage playing Nick Cage, it could have been done well. I feel like there could have been a lot more meat there, and I feel like by splashing this other shit in, it really took away from the movie for me.
I can agree with that. I think, like, hypothetically, the best version of this movie is where Pedro invites him on, they do the acid, they have a good time, and then that's the whole movie. Like, just a good hour of them fucking around on acid, doing movie scenes or whatever, just goofing around. I mean, that sounds like a fucking... That's gold bar to me.
It's that wacky shit that took me out of it, though. Like, that whole gag about him walking around the wall after, like, pushing him up the wall is just... Maybe it's just because I'm older, and I just am a lot more grumpy about that kind of shit, but I had my hands seeing that. I was just like, ugh.
Oh, I like that kind of shit. It felt like a classic dad movie. Like, dad movies get to be corny. That's kind of the whole spiel. So I feel like it gets a pass there, right? Like, you know what you're getting when you go in. Like, it's a dad movie. It's gonna be corny. The him playing like the drug dealer and stuff. Like, yeah, that wasn't great though. I can get behind that.
I think maybe they thought it would be funnier that it's Nicolas Cage as Nicolas Cage doing all this crazy stuff. But it just seems like a standard Nicolas Cage movie.
This isn't even the first time I've seen this idea played out, funnily enough, because there's that show on Amazon Prime. Was it Jean-Claude Van Johnson or whatever the hell?
Yep.
Where Jean-Claude Van Damme
And that
plays
does
Jean-Claude Van Damme.
that does that better than this movie.
Yeah, this movie overall, and it's even wilder to see because a lot of the more recent Nick Cage I've been intaking has been great. Like, Mandy, Pig.
Yeah.
I've been watching some of his older movies I really like Face Off, just shit like that. And like to go from that to just this overall, where it's like him embracing the meme in a way. I mean, he sees the pillow and shit, man. It's like, I don't know. It felt corny. It didn't feel good. It wasn't what I wanted. But that's not to say that it was terrible either. Like, I've definitely seen worse movies than this. But I don't know. I'm not going to recommend it to anybody, probably. That's my initial thoughts.
Let's go on to Knack.
Yeah, I kind of get the same feelings that Jeff did. Like, I wanted this to be more about just Nick Cage and his roles and his performance work. And I could have done without the whole drug lord kidnapping whole bit. There were moments in it where it was fun. Again, I just like read along with Jeff. I feel like the Pedro Pascal is adorable. He's just a charming guy in just about anything I've seen him in. And yeah, to see him kind of pretty much but maybe it was probably outperform. He outperformed Nick Cage in this movie. It was unconvincing as even from what it was going for. I felt like they could have thrown more references to more of his filmography into this. Even if he had stolen a plane or like a Con Air, this like more Con Air stuff or bringing out the dead. It could have done more with Nick Cage than it did. And a lot of it was cheesy. Yeah, I don't have much more to add outside of what Jeff already covered. Really, it was a tough watch. I really wasn't expecting the whole, daughter kidnapping drug lord scenario. It just didn't feel convincing as anything that was keeping me interested.
Well, they even try to comment on it in the movie because they're like talking about writing their movie that's effectively this movie. He's like, we have to have this subplot where the daughter's kidnapped so that we can get everybody in the theater. So there's a little something for everybody. And it's like, yeah, but just because you're making that the thesis statement doesn't make it the right choice. It still dilutes the shit out of the movie. Like Pedro Pascal's character was right. You know what I mean? He's like, no, that's just going to dilute it. That takes away from what the actual movie is. And it's like, thank you, Pedro. I'm glad one of you was on the right page.
Yeah,
Yeah. That's all I got for now, Joe.
Yeah, well, goes without saying, Nicholas Kim Coppola is a national treasure. We all love him. I love him ironically as well as this movie. It's a good trip. When it's funny, it's funny. There's some solid laughs. There's some solid deep cut references to Cage and who he is and his filmography. I wish there was more, honestly. Like, I felt like some of the references were a little too obvious. Like, of course, they're going to mention Con Air and I guess Face Off, obviously. And then they mentioned Captain Corelli's mandolin and that it's underrated. But, why would Nick Cage say that about his own movie? That doesn't really make sense. But these are just mentions of the movies. Like, the movie, it kind of is a Nick Cage type movie. Like, it's a spy thriller. But I wish that this movie was sort of an amalgam of all the different kinds of Nick Cage movies that exist. Like if they could throw in some Mandy, Color Out of Space, some adaptation, Bringing Out the Dead, some of the more serious stuff, some of the fun stuff, the good and the bad, throw it all in there. But instead, the second half of this movie just turns into like a standard spy thriller, and it just really lost me with that part.
I would love a movie where Nick Cage is like confronted with his career and the meme that he's become, you know what I mean? And like genuinely trying to be a good actor. And like, it's like that episode of Community where they're trying to figure out if Nicolas Cage is a good or bad actor. I would love that on screen. Like I would love a movie that confronts that and deals with that through the lens of Nick Cage.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah, if we're going to pile his whole filmography in there or like references to his whole filmography, I feel like it would have been really engaging to see him as himself and as the actor in this movie deal with that history. in a way that's meaningful instead of it just, you can run faster because it said so in the DVD extras for Gone in 60 Seconds or whatever the hell.
No, that's a decent joke.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That movie might be a mess. Honestly, I don't know if that's even possible to make.
Yeah, true.
But this movie it's kind of a loving tribute. Like they do make fun of him a few times, but he signed up for it, so obviously he doesn't have a problem with it. Like when they make fun of him for his inability to turn down any role, and he's like, "No, I just have a really good work ethic. I have to pay bills." I thought that was kind of funny. And every time he references his shamanic instincts and thespianism, and that as a thespian, do you guys know what that's about?
Yeah.
The Novo Shamanic. He has his own theory of acting that he's sort of channeling shamans from days of past when he's acting.
Yeah, I've heard that.
That joke was pretty solid too. That joke was good. That payoff was great.
Yeah. I'm glad that he has a sense of humor about himself, but I wish they would have taken it a little farther with it. The other thing I really love is his alter ego, Nikki. Do you guys know what that's based on?
I was going to ask
No.
that. There was a couple questions I had. I couldn't tell whether, I couldn't tell whether the getup in Nikki was a reference to one of his roles. I imagine it is, because it's not Wild at Heart. That jacket is, it's not the
Right.
jacket from Wild at Heart. But no. What is it though?
So there's this clip, you can see it on YouTube. He was in promotion for Wild at Heart. He has a Wild at Heart t-shirt on, and he's wearing a leather jacket. He goes on this British show called Woggins. Woggins is the interviewer guy, and Nick Cage he's clearly high on something.
Oh, that's right. I remember seeing that.
He comes out, he does like a backflip or a somersault, and he clearly doesn't land it. He starts throwing money at the audience, and then he's talking about, "Oh, I'm just a little worked up about something." And then he takes his shirt off in the middle of the interview. It's pretty incredible. And so his alter ego, Nikki, is based on like who he is as an actor during this interview. Sort of, he was only 26 at the time, but I think that it really represents who Nick Cage is, because he's sort of like a rock star who comes out and does a flip, but at the same time in the interview he's very humble, and explains how he's a hardworking actor, and he explains how he changed his name from Nick Coppola to Nick Cage to avoid accusations of nepotism, because he's the I think the nephew of Francis Ford Coppola.
I did not know that.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
news.
Yeah, he just wanted to be an actor, and he didn't want anyone to say that it's because he's the nephew of Francis Ford Coppola.
He does, Nick Cage, at least from what I've osmosed from interviews and what I've read about him online, he does strike me as someone who takes acting and his job seriously. You know what I mean? Like the man.
Well, he's a thespian.
Yeah.
He's gotta.
What is it? Nouveau shamanic.
Well, thespian is just like a highfalutin word for actor,
Yeah, he just I don't know. Like when he puts his good foot forward, like when he actually has a project that you can tell he's invested in and can really flex his muscles, I think that he can do great work. And I think he, even in his lesser, like even if you look at Ghost Rider, like the man is still giving effort. You know what I mean? Like the man takes his work, like he does, at least from what I could tell, he does have a solid work ethic in real life.
Absolutely, yeah. And if you just Google like random facts about him, he's the most interesting person who's ever lived. Like some of the choices of what he spends his money on are just astounding.
Yeah, I liked how they referenced him being in crippling debt.
Yeah.
Can't even afford a
That was
hotel
nice.
room.
Well, one thing I did want to mention is that I didn't like how the de-aging looked on Nikki. It was pretty bad. I did not like how. I mean, de-aging doesn't really work in a lot of stuff I see it in, but it was distracting. And
I wish it had been better, because seeing Nick Cage make out with Nick Cage is definitely going in the spank bank, and I wish I wish it had been rendered better. Oh.
Yeah.
And I know I haven't seen Leaving Las Vegas, but was there a Leaving Las Vegas reference in this movie?
The only thing is he jumps in the pool and he's drinking at the same
Okay,
time.
all right.
I think that's a reference, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a reference for sure.
Did you share your initial thoughts, Will?
I did not.
Yeah, what do
I
you
will
think?
share said thoughts now. Well, I don't know. I'm kind of with Jeff. I'm like really torn. Like I wanted to love this movie and I didn't. I was like okay with it up until I fell asleep, and then had to watch the last half of the movie at a different time because I fell asleep because it was kind of boring. It's like the idea for this movie is fucking amazing, right? And if they had executed it properly and probably gotten rid of like the shitty like side plot which ended up being the main plot of like the drug dealers and stuff, like we just didn't need any of that shit. It just detracts from the movie in so many different ways. And if they had just stayed focused on like on the fucking on the nut, like getting to see Nick Cage be Nick Cage at his Nick Cageiest, like these what do you mean these are my golden guns? Like, that kind of shit, that's good. I like that kind of shit. Like I wanted a lot more of those kind of references and jokes and stuff. I think that would have made this movie way better. I don't know. It felt a lot like National Treasure at points, which is not a compliment really, from me at least. It's like it gets some stuff right. Like it takes itself seriously enough in the context of what it is to like make sense. I never was like pulled out of the movie like this is just fucking nonsense, you know. I mean, there's a couple parts where it's kind of silly, but I'm like, okay, yeah, like this is what's happening, sure, but it's just fucking boring or too cliche or just fucking like the most well-tread path. I mean, like Jeff said earlier, this fucking oh, my family's in danger, I gotta step up and save them. That fucking trope is so old and overused. It's just gotta go at this point. I really, really, really fucking loved Pedro Pascal in this movie, and it just further cements him as like one of the most unbelievably great actors I've ever seen. He like gives this smile at one point. I can't remember exactly why. I think it's because like Nick said something like that made him happy or something, and it's the most genuine smile I've ever seen on film. Like it's just him actually smiling, and everybody, you know, and that and you can see smiles like that throughout cinema, but like there's just something about Pedro Pascal's face that makes it look fucking so heartfelt and real.
I'm not saying he's a bad actor, but I think it's a mistake to confuse his charm with his acting ability. I'm not saying he's a bad actor, but I think he has like he's got a 20 in charisma. You know what I mean? So he's just charming no matter where you put him. It's kind of like Brad Pitt. You know what I mean? Brad Pitt's just gonna be charming. That doesn't mean that he's gonna be the best actor to ever live, but it does mean when he's on screen, you can't help but, you know, maybe crack a smile or feel a little bit better. It's exactly how I feel every time I see Pedro Pascal.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. Yeah, I don't think it's like from his acting or anything like that. It's the reason it feels so genuine is because it fucking is. Like he it's like he brings a part of himself to this role at least, and a few of the other roles that I've seen that a lot of actors don't. They just become the character, whereas he brings himself into the character, and it fucking works.
I do like that the movie didn't go the other direction and have it be a bunch of people just clowning on Nicolas Cage the entire time.
Yeah, that would have just sucked. Like if they had made it like talking shit about him kind of and stuff, that wouldn't have worked.
This movie definitely feel like it came from a place of reverence. You know what I mean? People who genuinely like Nicolas Cage and what he's contributed to cinema, and what he's contributed to film and cinema. You know.
See, and that's part of where my problem is, because it's like it does feel like that at certain points a bit, but not to the degree that I would expect from like a real fanboy. You know what I'm saying? Like
I don't know. This definitely feels like it was made. It feels like it was made by a fanboy to be a fanboy and not to be, I guess, a good movie. I don't know.
this movie didn't gush over Nick Cage enough for me to be like that, which is crazy because this is like the fanboy Nick Cage movie, but I don't know, it just
I wonder how many times his name is said throughout the film. It's got to be like 300, bro. Every time it's like the villain says Nick Cage, Nick fucking Cage, like 35 times.
Yeah.
Every dude's taking a shit, Nick fucking Cage.
that all that bullshit had to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, that whole drugs. This movie would have just been so much better if it was just them getting fucking high on LSD and just going and fucking around. Like what? Like the scene where they switch shoes.
Yeah. Oh,
That's
thank you.
pure
Thank
gold.
you. Yeah.
That is such a fucking phenomenal. It's like phenomenal isn't the word, but like holy shit! Like there's never been a scene like that in any other movie, and they fucking pull it off super well.
That's true. Yeah.
It's fucking great.
Have we gotten like a buddy, like a bromance movie from Nicolas Cage before like this? Like, have we gotten something like this from him before?
If there is, I can't place it. I can't.
I can't either, to be honest with you. And I liked him in it. I liked him and Pedro Pascal opposite each other. That's definitely the best part of the movie. Yeah, I can't even think of him in comedies, really. I mean, if you don't count Ghost Rider.
I mean, like color. You know what? No, there is one. There is one. Color Out of Space. He's like buddy cop with the fucking alpaca-lopolis or whatever. The fucking
What?
the alpaca.
What are you-
they're like good buddies, right? In the
Are you
alpaca
saying
alpaca-lopolis.
No, dude, it's Nick Cage opposite an alpaca. It's great.
that becomes like an amalgam of multiple alpacas, and it's great. It's like total buddy cop film. No, yeah, I don't think the Crudes. I get no, like yeah, no. It's just I did like the Crudes reference in this movie too. Yeah, I don't know, man. It just yeah. I think this is the one. But yeah, the only other things I really have to say about it, like like I said, I love those LSD scenes. Those are all gold. Especially when they are like freaking out about the people looking at them, and the people like don't even notice them leave when they run away.
It was really funny.
They weren't looking at them at all. Yeah,
I was genuinely upset to see Javi pass out on LSD. I'm so like, sorry, you're not.
That's not how this works.
You're not making this credible at all.
Yeah, I don't know. The only other thing that I wrote down in my notes was just like trying to figure out what the fuck this movie is trying to say, right? Like what its purpose was, and I don't think it has one. It's just like a love letter to Nick Cage,
right?
You know?
Yeah,
and that's fine. It was kind of weird though, because like at the end, the ending of the movie almost evokes this like feeling of loss, like we're saying goodbye to Nick Cage, like he actually is retiring or dying or something. You guys pick up on that? Like, what's
He's
up?
got to focus on his crippling debt and fixing his family. So,
yeah,
which doesn't exist. He has a different family in real life.
Yeah.
Who's the girl who played his daughter? Because she kind of looks like she could actually be his daughter.
Lily Mosheen. She's been in a few random things.
That's one of my issues. That's one of my issues with this movie. Everyone knows Nick Cage has a son, Wesley Cage, he's like in a metal band. There's so many pictures of him standing next to his son, and his son is like in full goth attire, and it's hilarious.
That's phenomenal.
I guess you guys.
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, he has a son, not a daughter. 2 sons, I think. But that's part of the core of who Nick Cage is. He has a son who's a goth. You can't just rewrite that.
Revisionism at its finest.
It doesn't work. Yeah.
And he has one ex-wife. He's been married like 5 times, including to Priscilla Presley.
Yeah, this movie sucks.
Yeah.
It's just a bad movie.
Oh, Lily Mosheen is the daughter of Michael Sheen and Kate Beckinsale.
Whoa, okay.
Nepotism.
I can see that Michael Sheen smile right there. Honestly, I can see Michael Sheen's fucking smile right there. This movie made me want to catch up on Nick Cage movies.
It did. It definitely did.
It really wants to make me catch up on things I haven't seen, Leaving Las Vegas, and I know there's a number. I'd like to revisit 8mm. I feel like 8mm was the first movie I ever saw with Nick Cage in it. I feel like I could be wrong, but that is definitely one of the earliest Nick Cage films I've seen. It's not a great film, but it was.
Everyone remembers their first.
Yeah, like.
Mine was probably Face Off or Con Air, I think.
I think mine was National Treasure.
Ooh,
probably.
Yeah, that's a big oof, buddy.
No, that's not for me. I remember liking it, and I'm gonna keep it that way.
Well, We'll see about that, because guess what Jeff's recommending for our unofficial Nick Cage
No,
run?
I thought it was exciting, like it was, but I was 12. But
That first Nat Treasure movie is fine. Like nowadays, we'd like look at it like a Fast and Furious movie, right? Like it's just a
Right,
nonsense
yeah.
action comedy that's like whatever, it works.
Da Vinci Code knockoff is all it is.
Yeah, I mean you're not wrong, and that movie wasn't great either. So
It was better than National Treasure, that's for fucking sure.
well, National Treasure had Nick Cage though, so was it?
That's you make a compelling argument, Will. I mean, like he's very Nick Cage in that movie. He says,
Yeah.
"I have to steal the Declaration of Independence."
Yeah, that's
That
like
is-
the most Nick Cage line that exists.
That's what movies are all about, honestly.
Roses are red, violets are blue. Help me steal the Declaration of Independence.
For real though. Fucking for real.
That is a good question though. Knacker, what was your first brush with Nicolas Cage? You think?
He already said 8.
I think it was 8.
Was
I
it
think
8
it was
millimeter?
8mm. It was either 8mm or Face Off. It has to be one of those two films. But if I'm scanning through his filmography and the earliest stuff, I mean, it's either between 8mm, Face Off, or The Rock. It could be The Rock.
I didn't see The Rock until late. I saw The Rock for the first time like 4 years ago. But yeah, there's definitely a handful of his flicks I still haven't seen. I can't believe I still haven't seen Wild at Heart. I think that's the only, well, that and that Disney movie that he did are the only two Lynch flicks I haven't seen.
Man, we should get together and watch Wild at Heart.
I do want to watch it really bad. I mean, it's got Laura Dern and Nick Cage.
Yeah,
It's like my two favorite things.
Willem Dafoe.
David Lynch. How the fuck have I not seen this movie? You know what I mean? Like, for real. It looks like it's one of his more panned movies too in regards to critics, which is wild because that movie took the Palme d'Or.
It's based on a book, so it's not his own story.
Yeah, that's one of the only adaptions he did, isn't it?
I believe so.
He hasn't done many. I think it's just that one, maybe one or two.
Well, Dune.
Well, listen, Dune, but. Oh man.
Anyway, I got some recommendations for like if you like this movie. No one's mentioned adaptation. When we do a Nick Cage run, I got dibs on adaptation because that is a great movie.
I think Jeff mentioned it earlier in the
Oh, yeah.
cast. But just
really?
mentioning the title, not brushing up on it at all.
Yeah. Being John Malkovich is a good sort of meta movie where an actor plays himself.
I love being John Malkovich a lot.
I need to revisit that
Yeah.
soon.
And there's a random movie called My Name is Bruce about Bruce Campbell. He's the actor from Evil Dead, Army of Darkness.
Oh yeah.
And he plays himself, but he's playing a version of himself as a washed-up actor who lives in a trailer, drinks a lot.
That's right. I've seen a chunk of that movie. It was I actually got kind of a few laughs out of that.
It's not amazing. It's not great. Like, honestly, might not be as good as this movie, but it does a better job of being like a tribute to the actor who it's about. Because it is like, it turns into a Bruce Campbell movie. There's like a mummy and a curse and zombies and shit. So it's funny. I don't know. It's definitely good if you're a Bruce Campbell fan.
This was probably the least amount of notes I've taken for a movie we've done. It just didn't. This movie's just kind of meh. Sucked because I was like so fucking hyped for this.
It's got an 86% on Rotten Tomatoes, which I found kind of crazy.
Shocking. Yeah, I was shocked at that.
It feels like this movie is rated higher than it should be in a bunch of different ways.
Either that or there's just something I'm not picking up on. One of those two things.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. All of us were pretty meh. I mean, I guess we'll see what our ratings are, but yeah, like I don't know.
What you got for a rating there, Will?
Ooh, pass. Can I pass? Can I go last? Yeah, no, I got fuck. Any scene with Pedro and Nick, 10 out of 10. Everything else, fucking 5 out of 10. So we'll meet in the middle and say 7 out of 10. And I feel like that's giving it a little boost even. Yeah, 7 out of 10.
I'd give this a pretty solid 5 out of 10. Not because it's like middling, like it's not so boring that it's just flatline. Like if it was flatline, it'd be like a 1. I don't know. The movie to me felt torn, and I just didn't like half of it and could have done without it. And the half that I did like, I thought was solid enough to carry me. But yeah, it's gonna be a 5 out of 10 from this guy.
Yeah, I'm landing on a 6 out of 10. Deduction for Pedro Pascal, like outclassing outclassing Nick Cage.
Nick Cage
That's
is his
actually
own
like
movie.
a solid point. Yeah. Deductions for the subplot. It's 1 point deduction.
You got like a whole fucking spreadsheet over there now.
Yeah,
What's going on?
I guess I'm trying to justify my point deductions, but I mean, no, I'll just land on 6 out of 10 and let Joe give his rating.
Yeah, I love Nick Cage. When this movie is funny, it's really funny to me. It's not enough to carry it. I wish they would have leaned more on Nick Cage as being a funny person who can make fun of himself. So to me, it was a 5 out of 10, just middle of the road. All right, so I got the next rec. So this is a run of recs that they're just personal recs. We're not doing a theme or anything. So I got so many movies I could rec that I feel like you guys would enjoy because you guys have liked a lot of the stuff I've rec'd recently. But I think it'd be too easy. Like, you guys have given some more challenging things, with Thief of Baghdad being an older movie, Bright being a terrible movie, this being a movie that Will hasn't seen, but you do that a lot.
Yeah, that's kind of my whole shtick.
Yeah.
One trick pony.
Knack, I gotta say, you kind of usurped me by picking Thief of Baghdad, because that's a movie from 1940. That's the oldest movie we've ever done. So I'm going with something that's older order to usurp you in return. But this is a great movie. I know you guys are going to like it a lot. It's called It Happened One Night, directed by Frank Capra. It's from 1934. Obviously, it's in black and white, and it is in sound. Talking had taken over Hollywood by the 30s. Stars Clark Gable and Claudette Colbert. It's also pre-code, which was before they cracked down on like sexual jokes and stuff like that. But it's not crazy. It's not something you'd see nowadays. It's a romantic comedy, arguably one of the first rom-coms, and I'd like to talk about how to appreciate movies from this era in the context of when they were made, but also let's talk about how influential this movie is on movies in general, but also on the romantic comedy genre.
Awesome.
And that's all I got.